Picture the scenario. A massive swarm of Russian drones darkens the skies as it heads towards the Polish border on NATO's eastern flank. But NATO is prepared. Waiting to confront the swarm is a robot army, an AI-enabled network of automated surveillance systems, drones, robots, and missile systems. A major battle is about to take place, and the nearest military personnel are in control bunkers hundreds of miles away, acting largely as spectators as the machines they command go to war. Just a few years ago, this kind of scenario belonged strictly in the realm of science fiction. Now, it's rapidly becoming a reality. According to NATO top brass, the alliance is moving to boost its defenses along its borders with Russia by creating an AI-assisted automated zone that's not reliant on human ground forces. So let's take a closer look at the plan, some of the advanced new weapon systems that'll be used, and how this development might change the global security equation. Now, details of the plan were revealed by General Thomas Lowen, NATO's Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. In an interview with German Sunday newspaper Welt am Sonntag in late January, he described a new multi-layered defense concept that would see NATO using advanced technologies to slow or stop invading forces in the earliest phases of a conflict. In essence, the idea is to create a buffer zone along NATO's borders with Russia and Belarus, using surveillance networks and remotely operated or semi-automated systems to provide the first line of detection against an incursion. This automated zone would act as a sort of hot zone for breaching enemy forces, according to Lowen. Now, if you were thinking that a robot army as the first line of defense is still decades away, or even a lofty pipe dream, think again. Programs to test out the proposed capabilities are reportedly already underway in Poland and Romania, with the intention of making the system operational right across NATO within as little as 2 years. That rapid pace of deployment underscores the urgency with which NATO is acting to bolster its defenses against Russian threats in general. A spate of drone incursions across Europe in the second half of 2025 exposed an alarming level of unpreparedness across the continent to deal with the emerging threat of drone warfare. In most cases, the European nations where the incursions occurred, such as Belgium, the Netherlands, France, and Denmark, struggled to cope with unknown drones loitering near airports and military bases, or simply breaching their airspace. Most lacked anti-drone defenses, while some were inhibited by existing legislation from taking appropriate action, like shooting them down. And in instances where NATO did shoot incoming drones down, such as when around 20 Russian drones breached Polish airspace last September, it was compelled to use missiles in much shorter supply and worth many times more than their targets. That might be worth it for one-off incidents, but it's hardly sustainable in a prolonged conflict. Just ask Ukraine. Nonetheless, while few of these drone incursions have been conclusively pinned on Russia, the message they delivered was clear. NATO's anti-drone defense needs a serious upgrade, and ASAP. Since then, in response to the challenge, there's been a flurry of anti-drone activity in NATO land, particularly in member nations located closest to Russia, and most of it's high-tech, to put it mildly. Even before the September drone incursions into Poland, General Chris Donahue, commander of US Army Europe and Africa, had announced NATO plans to establish an eastern flank deterrence line. This line would comprise interoperable sensors and command systems designed to integrate with any available hardware. Russia has conscription and numbers, he said in July. We have to counter that with technology. The Polish incursions seem to have only sharpened NATO's resolve. In the immediate aftermath of these incursions, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen mentioned the concept of a drone wall to defend NATO's eastern flank in a State of the Union address. This drone wall, spanning 1,850 miles from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, would be the bedrock of credible defense, part of a broader effort to protect the region from Russia, she said. EU Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius added that the project should be developed with input from Ukraine, which has unrivaled experience in combating drones as a result of its long-running war against Russia. As for the funding, European startups and universities are likely to be involved, with some of the funding coming from the EU's roughly $176 billion Safe Defense Loan Fund. The Drone Wall initiative aims to create a permanent early warning barrier along NATO's eastern frontier, a line of technological deterrence against Russian aggression and hybrid warfare. NATO member states are hardly lacking in air defenses in general, but last fall's incursions exposed specific vulnerabilities against drones, which have become an increasingly staple part of Russian attacks. Systems like the IRIS-T and NASAM systems offer state-of-the-art protection against larger threats, such as crewed aircraft and cruise missiles. They can take down drones like Russia's Gerund long-range kamikaze drones with relative ease, but it's anything but cost-effective or sustainable. Each interceptor missile can cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, while Gerunds cost in the tens of thousands and can be produced in much greater quantities within much smaller timeframes. NATO members also have specific anti-drone systems, such as the Sky Ranger radar-directed gun system and the Gepard rapid-fire cannon system. These systems, and others in a similar vein, have proven to be effective at taking down Russian drones of all shapes and sizes in Ukraine. However, it would likely take tens of thousands of these systems to adequately protect NATO's interior, and thousands, plus the skilled manpower to operate them, to protect that 1,850-mile border. It's an undertaking that's simply not practical or feasible at this point. Ukraine has demonstrated, however, that one of the most effective and cost-effective methods of taking down Russian drones is by shooting cheap interceptor drones at them, i.e. drone versus drone. So the concept of a drone wall across NATO's eastern flank to combat Russian drones makes a lot of sense. It's affordable, scalable, can be implemented and iterated quicker than other more expensive solutions, and offers an excellent cost-to-kill ratio. Indeed, European defense companies are already taking their cue from Ukraine's experience to build out interceptor drone systems themselves. But before we go any further, we want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Private Internet Access, aka PIA, the world's most transparent VPN provider, trusted by over 30 million users worldwide. PIA is a leader in online privacy. Whenever you browse on an unprotected device, you're transmitting a great amount of information out into the open, which can be viewed by various different entities before reaching the website. VPN hides your IP address and encrypts your internet connection, shielding your data from your ISP, network administrators, and even government surveillance. Without a VPN, browsing online is a lot like sending a private message to a group chat. Everyone can see what you're doing. But with PIA, your activity is protected inside a secure, encrypted tunnel. Their no-logs policy has been proven multiple times in court and verified by an independent audit conducted by Deloitte, one of the world's leading auditing firms. Beyond security, PIA offers real freedom online, whether you're traveling abroad or just trying to access content not available in your region. PIA has you covered with servers in over 91 countries and all 50 US states. It also supports P2P file sharing and works with all major streaming services, so you can enjoy more content from anywhere. I personally use PIA while gaming to connect to local servers and reduce latency. It's also great for unlocking region-specific content across platforms like Netflix, Hulu, and more. PIA is available across all major platforms: Windows, macOS, Linux, iOS, Android, and more. And with just one subscription, you can protect an unlimited number of devices at the same time, perfect for securing your entire digital life. Right now, there's an exclusive offer for our viewers. Go to piavpn.com/themilitaryShow, also in the description, to get 83% off private internet access, bringing it down to just $2.03 a month. Plus, you'll receive 4 extra months completely free. And if you're still on the fence, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and 24/7 customer support is always available to help. So go try private internet access right now. Your privacy deserves no less, and with PIA, you're in good hands. In September, the UK announced the Octopus project, a joint venture with Ukraine to produce Ukrainian-designed interceptor drones in the UK for use in Ukraine. A month later, German startup Titan Technologies signed a deal with Germany's Defense Procurement Office to develop a system to protect critical infrastructure. The system reportedly involves AI-enabled interceptor drones that feature autonomous target acquisition and cost significantly less than traditional air defense systems. But while interceptor drones will almost certainly form an important part of the drone wall, and indeed the newly announced autonomous zone, there's a lot more to both than just that. The drone wall, according to military experts, will be an integrated system that connects different sensors and surveillance equipment with various capabilities to detect and deal with drone threats. And it's a similar story when it comes to the newly announced autonomous zone. But the idea is to fend off much more than just drones. It's a multi-layered defense concept that would see NATO using advanced technologies to slow or stop invading forces in the earliest phases of a conflict, whatever form they take. According to Lowen, this integrated system will include surveillance networks and remotely operated or semi-automated systems to provide the first line of detection against an incursion. The automated AI-powered system will use sensors to detect enemy sources and then activate defenses, including interceptor drones, semi-autonomous combat vehicles, land-based robots, and automatic air defenses and anti-missile systems. Intelligence collection would rely on a mix of fixed and mobile platforms, including radar, acoustic, and optical sensors, supported by data from satellites, drones, and reconnaissance aircraft. The sensors, located on the ground, in space, in cyberspace, and in the air, according to Lowen, will cover an area of several thousand miles. They'll detect Russian troop movements or the deployment of weapons and inform all NATO member states in real time. Then, once the incoming targets are locked, the system would begin taking them down. Most of this would happen automatically, controlled by AI or by remote control from command centers potentially hundreds of miles away. Lowen stressed that the AI-guided system wasn't meant to replace NATO's existing defenses, but rather to bolster its current weapon systems and forward-deployed forces. Moreover, any action involving lethal weapons would always be under human responsibility, according to the general. That would remove one of the more dystopian aspects of the plan. For good reason, science fiction stories ranging from the 1970 movie Colossus, The Forbidden Project, to the more recent Black Mirror series have cautioned against the perils of fully autonomous lethal weapon systems, or LAWS for short. The potential for this kind of AI to start thinking for itself is precisely what promoted former Google CEO Eric Schmidt to recently suggest that the best solution would be pulling the plug. However, as the aforementioned movie and series warned, pulling the plug on an AI system that can decide for itself to kill you is likely to be easier said than done. So, it's a good thing NATO intends to retain human control over its proposed automated defenses. And speaking of Schmidt, notwithstanding his concerns about the potential risks of AI, his company, SwiftBeat LLC, and its subsidiary, White Stork, produces what's likely to be a key component for both the drone wall and the autonomous zone, the MEROPS system. Reports started emerging in mid-2025 that this secretive system was being tested in Ukraine to great effect. Then, in November, it was revealed that both Poland and Romania had begun deploying the US-made system as an element of the drone wall, with Denmark also set to adopt the system. The goal is to make the border with Russia so heavily armed that Moscow would be deterred from ever crossing it, from Norway in the north to Turkey in the south, one NATO official reportedly said. According to Colonel Mark McClellan, Assistant Chief of Staff for Operations at NATO Allied Land Command, what the system does is give us very accurate detection. It's able to target the drones and take them down at a low cost. It's a lot cheaper than flying an F-35 to take them down with a missile. General Lowen concurred, saying the system gives commanders time to assess the threat and decide to shoot or not shoot, and that MEROPS is versatile enough to defend both critical infrastructure like airports and military units in combat zones. So, what is the MEROPS system? And why is it such a compelling part of NATO's Eastern Flank defense equation? In a nutshell, it's an advanced anti-drone complex designed around the company's bespoke Surveyor interceptor drones. Each MEROPS unit includes a command station, launch platforms, and a fleet of surveyor drones. These interceptor drones can either operate autonomously or be remotely piloted, and are equipped with radars, electro-optical infrared cameras, and AI algorithms to detect and classify small drones. Having identified and fixed on their targets, they then take them down by smashing into them at high speed in mid-air. The entire system is compact enough to fit in the back of a mid-sized pickup truck and can detect and intercept drones using AI-guided navigation, even when satellite or electronic communications are jammed. Training exercises conducted in Poland showed that MEROPS can even be launched from standard pickup trucks, highlighting its supreme suitability for shoot-and-scoot type operations. Another compelling aspect of the system is its small operating crew and training period. A full crew consists of 4 personnel, a commander, a pilot, and 2 technicians, and their training cycle reportedly only takes 2 weeks. By comparison, training of Ukrainian crews to operate the US-made Patriot missile system is estimated to take at least several months. While full technical specifications remain undisclosed, the surveyor drones reportedly reach speeds of over 175 miles per hour. That's considered fast enough to intercept jet-powered drones such as the Russian Gerin 3, which can exceed 190 miles per hour. The drones are also reported to be resistant to electronic jamming, a claim that admittedly has not yet been independently verified. Most importantly, they're reportedly very effective at taking down Russian drones. By November, Ukrainian outlets were reporting that the Ukrainian armed forces had already used the MEROPS to shoot down more than 1,000 Russian Gerin-type drones. Clearly, as demonstrated by its deployment in Poland, Romania, and Denmark, this success hasn't gone unnoticed by NATO. It's likely to be entirely non-coincidental that the proposed capabilities of the autonomous zone are being tested in the very same countries where the MEROPS is known to have been deployed, Poland and Romania. As for the other components of the proposed autonomous zone and robot army, at this point we can but speculate. It's a pretty safe bet, though, that the Maven Smart System NATO, MSS NATO for short, will be at the heart of it. The deal with Palantir Technologies to implement this next-generation system into NATO was finalized in April 2025, in what NATO described as one of the most expeditious in its history, taking only 6 months from outlining the requirement to acquiring the system. Since Allied Command Operations was expected to begin using the system within 30 days of its acquisition, it's likely to already be deeply embedded into NATO systems across the board, as intended. MSS NATO is an artificial intelligence platform designed to enhance battlefield operations through intelligence fusion, targeting capabilities, and accelerated decision-making for the Alliance's military forces. It integrates large language models, generative AI, and machine learning, automating intelligence fusion by analyzing data from multiple sources, including sensors, satellites, ISR systems, and human reports. This enables a small team of 20 to 50 soldiers to process battlefield intelligence that previously required hundreds or even thousands of analysts. Other AI-enabled systems that could be implemented into the autonomous zone alongside the MEROPS include the Switchblade 300/600 AI-guided autonomous targeting loitering munitions and the Kratos XQ-58A Valkyrie jet-powered drone used in the US Air Force and Marine Corps Loyal Wingman program. But that's purely speculation at this point. What isn't speculation is that NATO certainly isn't alone in developing and deploying AI-enabled and autonomous weapon systems. In fact, given the pace of similar development amongst its major rivals, it's probably a very good thing that NATO is taking action at such a rapid rate. For example, North Korea made waves last year with the ominous announcement that it would be integrating AI into its nuclear arsenal. But it's more ominous than that. A recent report by South Korea's Institute for National Security Strategy found that North Korea has moved beyond experimental AI development into practical deployment in systems like AI-equipped suicide drones, as well as facial recognition, voice synthesis, multi-object tracking, and real-time video analysis. While the full scale of North Korea's AI military capabilities remains uncertain, the intent and strategic emphasis are clear: Kim Jong-un is using AI to project power, to overcome resource limitations, and challenge global military and cyber norms. But, as in most things, the scale of the threat from North Korea pales in comparison to that presented by China. China has been aggressively advancing its development of AI-enabled and automated weapon systems, positioning itself at the forefront of military AI innovation. The People's Liberation Army, or PLA, is rapidly integrating AI across domains, including unmanned aerial, ground, sea, and subsea systems, with a focus on autonomy, swarm operations, and human-machine teaming. Advanced UAVs like the Tai Hong series and the Lookout 2 unmanned missile boats feature growing capabilities for coordinated AI-driven swarm attacks. Norinco's Intelligent Precision Strike System, which autonomously dispatches drones, tracks targets, and assigns strikes in real time, is currently undergoing tests, and the PLA is deploying AI for target recognition, predictive maintenance, logistics automation, and real-time battlefield decision-making, using systems like TNG Yao, a cloud-based decision-making AI. But, at least for now, while the US may view China as its biggest rival, for NATO, the number one threat is still Russia, and Russia appears to be developing AI-enabled and automated weapon systems just as aggressively. As part of the country's massive military rearmament strategy, President Vladimir Putin ordered significant changes to Russia's defense production priorities in May 2025, including the acceleration of unmanned systems, AI capabilities, and directed energy weapons. Its Military-Industrial Commission has set a goal of deriving 30% of combat power from AI-enabled robotic platforms by 2030. Russia has already introduced nuclear-capable autonomous systems, including the Poseidon underwater drone, Avangard hypersonic glide vehicle, and Kinzhal hypersonic missile, all of which incorporate AI for navigation, target selection, and evasion. It's also increasingly integrating AI in both its long-range and frontline drones, and its Automated Control System, or ACS, is an attempt to emulate the US's JADC2, integrating AI to process battlefield data in real time, enabling faster decision-making. Put it all together, and the notion of robot armies squaring off is anything but science fiction. At this rate, it looks like we're just a few years away from NATO and Russian weapon systems waging war against each other with very little human involvement. Let's hope that the plug doesn't need to be pulled to prevent a Skynet-type scenario from developing. We'll of course keep you updated with all the latest developments, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel to stay up to date. Thanks for watching.